Good day, citizens of the free world, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea. I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in to the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. Our mission is simple. We're searching for beneficial disruption in healthcare from emerging technologies. I'm very pleased today that my guest that's kind enough to join us is Richard Luck, the COO and co-founder of Decent. Richard, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, Jim, thanks for having me. And wow, what a great intro. I love it.
Well, thanks a lot. I was looking just a few minutes ago at the Decent website, and it states,
yes,
affordable health care for all. Decent will offer
yes,
more affordable health care by aligning incentives to improve health care, reduce costs, and put members at the center of their care. That's a pretty big task. So, we kind of hear what Decent's goal is. How is Decent going about doing it? What's the problem, and how are you attacking it, Richard?
Yeah, that's a great question. And feel free to cut me off if I go too long on this one, because I love to get on my soapbox about this.
Great.
One of the biggest challenges that we have seen in healthcare, and one of the primary things that we're trying to address immediately, is two things, actually. One is the ever-rising cost of healthcare. And when people talk about the ever-rising cost of healthcare, more often than not, they're talking about the rising cost of healthcare insurance. Yes, certain procedures, the pricing is going up, but in a lot of procedures, the pricing is actually leveling out or coming down due to technology. But yet, healthcare insurance premiums keep going up year after year, and we all feel the pain of that. The second one that we're trying to address is we believe one of the core reasons behind this is the industry's current alignment around fee-for-services. It creates this weird incentive where, as a doctor, I'm not incented to keep you healthy. I'm incented to run tests on you because that's how I'm going to get paid. The more tests I run, the more claims for reimbursement I can file, the more money I'm going to be able to make. And so we started looking at this and trying to figure out a way if we could just, simply shift the alignment structure and take it back down to its basics. What if we started with just the patient and their primary care doctor? Is there a way that we can get the primary care doctor to be incented to see you as a human and not as a cash register that has to be rung every time you come in the door? And fortunately for us, there's a lot of doctors in this country that are thinking the same way as us and trying to realign their incentives and their get in alignment with their members. And so from an insurance perspective, we started looking at rebuilding our insurance program around this concept of direct primary care, or DPC, you'll hear it called in this country. And these are doctors that basically have said, enough with the fee-for-service. I'll just charge you a flat monthly fee. It's like a subscription. Come see me however often you need to see me, and I'm your first point of contact for anything that you have that's healthcare related. So we started talking with some DPC doctors, and they said, yeah, we love what you're doing because as a DPC clinic, I'm not insurance. I can treat my members on their primary care needs day in and day out, but I don't have wraparound coverage if they need to go to the hospital or if they need to see a specialist. The best I can do is offer them a cash rate, in my local network to hopefully help keep their costs down. So that's the fundamental core around which we are building our health insurance, our health insurance offering, if you will. How we're going to also remove some of this other cruft and excess from the system is where the blockchain technology comes into play. And I think that's sort of at the crux of what you were asking earlier, is like, how does that work? So there's a couple of things that we can do. Obviously, if we look at what blockchain is really good at, think about, the smart contracts that are getting built out on say, for example, the Ethereum chain, and marry that up with what happens when claims come in for processing. There's two things that blockchain is advantageous for here. One is you've got the automatic adjudication of claims. If the claim meets these criteria, it should get paid, and if it doesn't, it should not, or it should go for review. And software, especially distributed software on the chain, can process that pretty effectively, pretty efficiently, and in short time should be able to do it pretty cheaply. We still have some challenges, obviously, with smart contract costs on the Ethereum chain, but there's other chains that are popping up, and there's even cost savings being introduced into Ethereum that are going to drive those costs down even further. So that's one area. Instead of having these huge legacy systems that take millions of dollars to maintain and support, that the big insurance companies have, we can build on modern technology. It's distributed, and we can handle that far cheaper. Secondly, where blockchain technology is really interesting is the use of tokens as incentives. So imagine a world where, and I always use this as an analogy, imagine a world where you go to a restaurant, the host or hostess seats you at your table and charges you 50 cents for the privilege of doing that. You sit down, you look at the menu. There's a lot of great food on the menu, but there are no prices. You order off the menu, you leave the restaurant without paying a bill, and you come home, and about a week later you get a bill from the waiter who served you food. You get another bill maybe a month and a half later from the chef in the kitchen. And then a couple of weeks after that, you get a bill from the food service delivery person who delivered the food to the kitchen. That's how modern healthcare works right now. You go in to see a specialist or go into an urgent care clinic, you have no idea what this is going to cost you or when the bills are going to stop coming. That's the reality in which we live. So where blockchain and token incentives can come into play is imagine a world where you get an MRI. It's a procedure that can, say, cost anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, depending upon where you go. And you don't know how much it's going to cost at the time you go to get it. Insurance company pays for it. You get the bill. And we find out that it was $2,000. And now imagine the next person comes in, they get their MRI, they go to a different clinic, and the insurance company processes the bill and realizes it's only $1,000. Well, now we have a price differential that if we publish it out on the blockchain can be public and verified and can be referenced. And now we have, given this lower price, if the third person comes in and needs an MRI, we know where the lowest priced MRIs are going to be in that geographical area. We can actually incent members to go and seek that less expensive procedure and drive that excess expenditure out of the system. And by driving that excess expenditure out of the system, we should be able to lower costs for everybody within the system. And if we're lowering costs, it just stands to reason that insurance premiums are going to come down as well. So that's sort of the 80,000-foot view, if you will.
Okay, well, let me unpack that a little bit and ask some questions, maybe taking your recent things that you said. So price transparency, we've all been trying to get price transparency for some time.
It's the holy grail, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is important. And so if you go for an MRI or CT, they, depending on whether you are self-pay or Medicare or some third-party Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're charging different rates for the same procedure. What you're suggesting is that, and those third-party payers have agreements of some type with that provider, with that service provider.
They may or they may not, right? We are assuming, and we know actually from conversations and from how the insurance industry works, the folks that are on the lower end of that spectrum probably do have those provider agreements. Yes, but there's also the cash rates, which is the rate where the provider will say, if I get my money today instead of 3 weeks from now, I'll give you a discount on that. So there's that at play too. If you're out of network though, going to it, you're paying probably the highest of the highest rates.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so. Kind of going back to the first statement you made that, I guess the industry calls it capitation. I will take care of this patient if I'm a primary care physician for X amount a month. I'm going to charge X amount, and I'm going to take care of what they need. And then if they need to go for lab service or diagnostics or specialty or something like that, have they already negotiated, or is it just that the public transparency of price allows the provider and their patient to know, the most affordable option?
Yeah. It's primarily the first. So a lot of the DPC providers that we've been talking with have built up their own internal network of referral specialists that they refer to their patients to for basically the same reason that you and I have been discussing. They have patients that their patients know how much it's going to cost them each month to come in and see them. They want to extend that insight into what it's going to cost to them when they refer them out. So these network of specialists tend to have been hand curated by the DPC practices themselves, and the rates have been negotiated. So they may not have full coverage, mind you, but they have at least a referral for an X-ray, a referral for possibly an orthopedist if you need, if you broke your arm or something like that. And those tend to be the pre-negotiated, almost, if you will, cash rates. It's like, we're going to pay today, we're going to walk in the door and charge it on the credit card, but, this is the rate that you should charge them, not what you would charge, insurance company, or not what you would charge Medicaid based upon the published rates. So, yeah, there's that part of the network. One of the things that you sort of hinted at that I don't think we dove into fully was, these pre-negotiated rates. That's sort of what the market will bear. That's what the provider believes is necessary for them to cover their expenses and to operate. Everything else that they do in terms of pricing is about how much extra can I extract out of the system because I may not get a steady stream of patients from the practice that I'm operating in the way that I'm operating it. And what's missing from that pricing model is market forces. Not a lot of these providers have deep insight into what their competitors are charging. It's not like, I used restaurants early on, but you could use it with anything else. If I'm looking for a part, an automotive part, I can pretty much find the price of that part at any dealership online. I can go to the auto parts suppliers. A lot of them, have online catalogs. There's price transparency in that marketplace. And so prices come down to what is their natural point that is going to allow the sellers and the manufacturers to operate at a profit and stay in business and to maintain their profit margin for growth in that. But it's not all over the board. I don't find parts that are, $5 in one place and $50 in another place, but I do see that in healthcare. And we believe, like a lot of other people believe, that transparency on that pricing is one thing. But, once you have broad enough transparency, then market forces come into play. And if a business sees that, hey, the public published price for the procedure that I offer, that was a lot of P's, apologize about that. When the published public price is X and I'm charging Y, and my business is going downhill because folks are going to, a similar service across town for less money, then that's when I start to look at my prices and go, well, wait a second, maybe I need to bring them down to be more competitive on price. And we believe that that's one part of the incentive model. The other part of the incentive is to make sure that there is value associated with that price. So they're not just lowering their price, but then, they're offering a service that you have to revisit them every 6 months, because that's not healthy for members. So it's a balancing act, and
Is Decent a reimbursement platform that takes out administrative costs as well as stimulates more affordable pricing? Is that what?
Let me answer in a slightly different way, because I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Sure.
For all intents and purposes, our company will look, our health plan is going to look and act and operate like a health insurance plan.
And you have members who join.
We will have members. We haven't launched yet. Our launch is in April of 2019, and that's when we're going to start onboarding members, yes.
Sure, okay. So it's a membership-based care organization, correct? Would you say that?
You should view it just as an insurance company. It's not like a health sharing ministry or a health care sharing organization because those have limits on the upside potential costs. Ours will, for all intents and purposes, be an insurance company. Why I say all intents and purposes is that we are operating sort of under ERISA laws rather than, the same, going to be the Cignas and the Aetnas and those of the world in terms of how we go to market. It's going to be a little bit different.
Sure. Well, and so let's talk about how patients can be incentivized. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And so, one way is if somebody has hypertension and it's being controlled, that's a good thing. Is there a way with your system that is incentivized?
Yeah, it's really funny you mentioned that one. That's one that we were actually discussing last week. You're spot on. So you are getting what it is we're trying to go after. Yes. If we have members in the insurance plan that have hypertension, and we know, statistically speaking, hypertension is one of those that if it's regulated and monitored, we have better long-term outcomes than if it's not. So there would be incentives to regulate and monitor and see your primary care doctor on whatever frequency your primary care doctor has instructed you to see them. And if you're doing all of these things, then the plan that we have is that you should receive some form of token incentive. That token incentive could be used for reduction in monthly premiums. It could be used for other things within the network. We still haven't fleshed out all of the uses of the token, nor all of the incentives that would result in it. But you're spot on. You're getting the exact idea.
Right, and so the tokens can be exchanged for products and services, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah.
Right, and so will Decent issue the token? Will it be the Decent token?
Yeah, so that's our thought right now is that we are going to issue this as incentive for those behaviors that lead to better long-term health outcomes. We would also be, one of our plans is to take the excess profit that we have in just from the premium insurance pool and drive that into purchasing back tokens on the open market to help drive up the value of the token. So our members who are receiving token grants, those become more valuable to them over time. And like I said, they can use them for reduction of premiums, or they can use them to purchase products or whatever, possibly those things or whatever we introduce in the future.
Sure. Do providers get tokens if in any way?
The goal, it's a great question. The is that participants in the network eventually are going to be eligible to receive doing things within the network that drive efficiencies or save money. An example could be we have actuaries who want to do work on the actuarial model and are incented to do so and paid to do so with tokens. Claims processors we were talking about earlier about claims adjudication, and a certain part of it can be automated and some part of it has to be manually reviewed. Right now that manual review process is to a large extent full-time employees at large insurance companies sitting in an office, but there's I forget the last count. I want to say it's like 100,000 plus independent claims adjudicators in this country alone. And there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't have them work at whatever frequencies that they wanted to work in exchange for tokens or monetary compensation to adjudicate those claims on our behalf and use a consensus model where, the decision's not up to one adjudicator, but up to a consensus of, say, for example, 3 adjudicators. Providers would be incented. If I'm going back to the DPC example that we were talking about, if I'm a DPC doctor and I have a network of folks that I'm referring to, and that network of that network of specialists has a cost point that is less expensive than the network of folks that we have access to on the outside, there could be an incentive for us to gain access to their network for the referral of people that are not their patients. So that's sort of things that we're thinking about. But yes, the idea is that the token could be used by any actor within the network on the protocol.
Mm-hmm. And Decent is going to have access to a lot of patient data. And frequently, de-identified healthcare is licensed. Do you and everybody gets paid when that occurs, except the patients whose healthcare it is. And so there's a move among many blockchain healthcare companies to allow patients to agree to have their de-identified health records licensed to pharmaceutical companies or research organizations and receive incentives in the form of tokens for that, kind of for the first time ever, receive compensation. Are y'all thinking about that at all?
That's a great question. And to be honest, at this stage of our evolution, we have not talked about that as a phase 1 or even a phase 2 feature. We did have a high-level conversation about what does our health plan protocol look like in 5 years or 10 years when it's fully decentralized and when members are able to sort of spin up their own insurance pools, if you will, and self-manage them. At that point, I think it absolutely is part of it. Our long-term vision is not that Decent is a health insurance company that is offering health insurance for everybody in the world. Our long-term vision is that we have developed a protocol that any group of individuals who are aligned around, whether it's faith or aligned around industry or aligned around just common beliefs about how to live healthier lives should be able to spin up and run and manage their own health insurance programs if they choose to, and they would do that using Decent protocol. And in that world, absolutely, the members are the owners, are the deciders of what's covered and what's not covered. And in that universe, they absolutely should be compensated for the data that is theirs, because at the end of the day, it is their data. And what a world it would be if the owners of that data were able to actually earn something from it rather than the mediators of that data. So yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not on our short-term plan, but absolutely that is a long-term strategy. But we're thinking about it in a slightly different way. Instead of incentivizing them to anonymize that and license it, to actually say, you own the data, you decide what you want to do with it, and here are the tools if you choose to go down that path.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very important. I think we'll see a lot more of that. Well, you mentioned that Decent will start accepting members and launch sometime in 2019. So is that the timeline, in the first quarter perhaps?
Yes. Yes, we're looking actually for an April 1st launch. We're going to be launching in Austin, Texas. We're hoping to launch in Austin, Texas. Still got a few I's to dot and T's to cross. But yeah, April of 2019 is our anticipated launch date.
And when you say Austin, is that South by Southwest, or? So
South by Southwest is in the month prior. It's in March. So it's an interesting from a timing perspective. Though to be quite honest, we're still undecided about whether to participate in South by Southwest.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. How would someone find out more about Decent, or contact y'all, or get on an email list? What's the best way?
Yeah. No. All great questions, Jim. So the easiest way is if you go to decent.com. And it's spelled just like it sounds. Go to decent.com. On our homepage, if you want to get on our newsletters and find out more information, you can sign up straight there. We send out a monthly update to all of our members, letting them know what progress we've made and what's happening. So that's the best way to get in the know. We also have a Telegram channel that you can join from our homepage. And if you go to the About Us, every team member's LinkedIn profile is there, so you can reach out to us directly as well.
Okay, so I'm sure you have Facebook, LinkedIn, as you mentioned, Twitter, all the typical.
I think we've got them all
channels.
right now.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good way to stay in touch. Well, our time's run out. I've really enjoyed this, Richard. I want to thank you for joining me, and thanks to our listeners on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. Again, I offer a special salute to my guest, Richard Luck, the COO and co-founder of Decent. You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. And until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors. Thanks again, Richard.
Thank you so much, Jim. It was a pleasure.